KO!
Looks like we're kicking off this year with a bang. Poor Miles, though.
Honestly, I'm surprised how this turned out. At first glance, Miles appeared to have a good chance of victory.
He was definitely physically stronger than Static. He would have totally won an arm wrestling contest.
But Virgil's overwhelming electric power put him at a level above the young Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, overall Static's feats were way above Spidey's, even when we scaled Miles to classic Peter Parker's biggest feats. Static definitely had the oomph to take Miles out, but Miles had no easy way to get around his force field.
The variety of techniques at Static's disposal also rent many of Spider-Man's abilities moot.
Like how Spidey's invisibility didn't matter when Static could light him up like a Christmas tree, and his speed was so similar to what the Spider Sense could give Miles that the Super Radar wasn't that big of a help. Remember, just because he knew an attack was coming didn't always mean he could dodge it in time.
And, well, shockingly, Static only needed to hit him once. See, his electromagnetic manipulation gave him control over Miles' wall crawling and other abilities. As soon as he got a hold of Miles' bioelectric aura, it was basically all over.
But hey, Miles and all the other Spider-Men fight Electro all the time, and they have no problem dealing with him. Why was Static any different?
Simply put, every iteration of Electro pales in comparison. He has no feats of power that come even close to Static, and frankly, he's an idiot. This was a fascinating matchup, but oh no, not again!
Yay! Mr. Morales put up a jolly good show, and yet Mr. Hawkins had him outdone in breathtaking power, stalwart defense, and veritable versatility.
Oh, he was just miles ahead of him, don't you know?
The victor is Static.
KO!
Looks like Sindel's head is blasting off again! Or, well, for the first time technically, so I tried to work it in, guys.
This battle was a curious one. For the most part, Sindel's physical strength, projectiles, and aerial maneuverability let her keep up with the bird of prey.
Yeah, she was 160 times stronger, but Canary's made a living off fighting superhumans who are even stronger than that, like Mammoth and Giganta, so I guess that wasn't that big of an advantage, really.
Comparing Cabal's bullet timing to her nanosecond reaction, Dinah's reaction speed was easily 60 million times faster, and with her wide array of martial arts abilities, she certainly capitalized on this.
Sure, Sindel had some awesome moves, but sadly, stepping on people like a hot dominatrix doesn't quite stack up when Black Canary mastered way more fighting styles. Plus, she's been training all her life. Adenia was super peaceful before Shao Kahn came along, so I doubt Sindel was taking names and kicking ass all before that.
But let's move on to the comparison everyone wants to know. Which was deadlier, the Banshee Scream or the Canary Cry? We know Dinah's cry could reach 300 decibels. In comparison, the results of Sindel's most powerful scream are similar to a 5.0 earthquake, which is equivalent to only 235 decibels.
I know what you're thinking. That's a difference of only 65 decibels. That can't be all that different. Wrong! It's totally different, because decibels are freaking weird.
See, decibels are not like meters or minutes, which scale geometrically. Instead, decibels scale logarithmically. For every 10 decibels a sound is, its intensity increases tenfold. So 30 decibels is 10 times greater than 20 decibels, 40 is 10 times greater than 30, and so on.
So, every increase multiplies the sound instead of just adding to it. Wait a minute, that means the Canary Cry would be
about 1,000,000 times stronger than the Banshee Scream, nearly 500 megatons of TNT.
awesome.
The closest real-life comparison we can make is the Krakatoa eruption of 1883, a volcano blast so powerful it could be heard over 3,000 miles away. Not so different from what Dinah has been shown to be capable of.
It also didn't hurt that Canary had those special membranes in her ears to guard against Sindel's scream.
In the end, Canary had the speed, skill, and raw decibels to finish her.
It was Sindel's time to die. Nah.
What, no pun about screams?
Well, I was gonna, but I thought a pun that obvious wouldn't be allowed.
The winner is Black Canary.
KO!
Looks like Leo totally didn't see that coming.
Are you gonna keep reusing that one, or should I expect something new?
Oh, I'm sorry, do you want me to shell out some more puns?
Fine. Leonardo certainly had more martial arts experience than Jason, and he was likely a bit faster, as we've seen him dodge lightning more reliably. If it were just up to those two factors, the Ninja Turtle may have won.
But you know there's more to it. Sure, Leo had some super tough defense on his side, but Jason had the oomph to crack that shell.
First of all, Leonardo's superior training was a moot point, as Jason's morph granted him a broad mastery of martial arts talent automatically.
Kinda cheap if you ask me, but that's Power Rangers for you.
But let's talk numbers. Giving Leonardo the benefit of the doubt, we scaled his level of toughness to his recurring villain Baron Draxum.
Who's fought Leo a bunch of times? Remember how Draxum survived his lab exploding? That's definitely the best durability feat Leo could possibly match.
By scaling the lab to the height of the characters, then deducing the size of the explosion itself, its explosive yield must equal about 12 tons of TNT.
Pretty impressive, but then we used the same method on the control center exploding while Jason was inside, and it came out to 550 tons of TNT.
45 times greater than Leonardo.
So clearly Jason was much tougher, but we still had to find their overall strength. To do that, we compared Leo's bug-crushing pillar to the Rangers bowling with boulders.
Using granite as an average potential density and scaling the pillar to Leonardo's height, it appears to weigh about 240 metric tons.
Still impressive, but way less than the 11,000-ton boulder. The Red Ranger couldn't just crack that shell, he could make turtle soup out of it.
Leonardo held some advantages in speed and skill, making this fight far from one-sided. However, Jason's superior strength, arsenal, and powers quickly turned the tide.
His Ranger of abilities does what Leonardo don't.
The winner is Jason.
KO!
Well, looks like Genos is G no more.
Genos was certainly a serious threat in the field of battle. However, Rhodes held a solid advantage in many different aspects.
He's had years of training in the military, even before becoming a superhero, which means he's been doing this for way longer.
Stratagems aside, let's compare their power output. At his best, Genos had kicked the Elder Centipede backward,
Which was freaking huge.
According to an interview with a One Punch Man manga illustrator, Elder Centipede's body measures 15 meters wide. With that and scaling to its surroundings, we determined its full size to be over 700 meters long. The force to knock aside something this large would have to be over 15 megatons of TNT.
But War Machine's got the edge over that. Remember the giant rock that was the size of Manhattan?
Taking the square footage of Manhattan and the height of the rock, we found that the energy it would take to shatter a rock of this size comes out to over 280 teratons of TNT.
Way more than Genos knocking around the big bug. War Machine's orbit-breaking flying speed proves he's a lot quicker too. But even if he could get a hit in, Genos had no way to counter Rhodey's energy-draining tech and Ghost Chameleon mode.
Genos was certainly a powerful contender, but War Machine's overwhelming firepower and high-tech abilities were just too much for the teenage cyborg.
Yeah, War Machine was on the road to victory.
The winner is War Machine.
KO!
This just in, male stripper found dead after a crazy night with a dominatrix gone wrong. More at 7.
Let's get to this. This was certainly an interesting matchup, and both cryomancers held their own advantages.
Oh yeah, Gray's awesome ice make powers meant he had a ton of versatility at his frosty fingertips. Like how he could eat ice to replenish his magic. She sure didn't see that one coming.
Though being the tactician she is, Esdeath likely wouldn't fall for any of Gray's tricks more than once. Also, both were in the same range of speed by scaling to feats of dodging lightning.
Yeah, but the Queen of Cold Kink definitely had more ice power up her sleeves. Just look at those storms. The one Gray scales to covered a country, while Esdeath's covered a whole continent.
True, but we still had to deduce the exact nature and potential of her storm. Remember, Esdeath specifically claimed it took her a few days to make the ice cavalry she used as fuel for the storm. A few generally means 3 at minimum. So we can cut the yield of our previous calculation to 1/3. Lowballing this a bit, let's assume she used all of her power each day to make 1/3 of the total cavalry. This would mean Esdeath could wield about 93 petatons worth of energy on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's way more than Invel's ice storm, and 1,600 times deadlier than that meteor Urza obliterated. Esdeath definitely had the advantage in sheer magic power. Even with his better resistances, there's no way Gray could survive that much magic force. So he really only had one shot, the Lost Ice Shell.
Which certainly could have ended things right then and there, if not for Esdeath's time stop ability. Both the Ice Shell and Mahoptima could only be used once, but Mahoptima was more useful given its immediate effect compared to the Ice Shell's long casting time, and its versatility in that Esdeath could follow it up with whatever she wanted.
Also, it doesn't kill her, so that's a plus.
Sure.
Technically, Gray's Ice Devil Slayer magic means he could probably resist the Mahoptopotamus a bit. But that brat Tatsumi had crazy good cold resistance too, and it didn't do him much good against the time freeze.
Gray's speed and versatility meant he could hold his own. But Esdeath's awesome power, uniquely suited time freezing, and domineering perseverance saw her through this battle.
Looks like Esdeath stopped Gray cold.
The winner is Esdeath.
KO!
Oh, he forgot to say he's blasting off again! Do it over! We gotta get that joke right at least once.
This was certainly a unique battle to experience.
While Machamp's resilience came in handy, Goro's fighting styles continued to put Machamp to the test again and again. Plus, Goro's huge! At 8 feet tall, Goro towers a full 3 feet over the average Machamp. Obviously, not including the Dynamax and Gigantamax forms found exclusively in the Galar region.
Also, while Machamp could punch at Mach 1 speeds, Goro could technically match Cabal, who would need to move at nearly Mach 3 to parry machine gun fire.
So as far as punching speed was concerned, it looks like Goro actually had the advantage.
Except it hardly mattered. Machamp's power output outdid Goro's and then some. Even scaling Goro to Kotal Khan's ship feat and comparing it to the seismic toss, Machamp is almost 170,000 times more powerful.
This Karate Duck Man is on a whole other level. Plus, he had a ton of ways to counter everything Goro threw at him. Knockoff prevented Goro from using weapons, and Guts meant he could take Goro's fire breath and use it for himself.
The Dragon Fangs and Fire Breath hardly would make much of a difference considering how durable the Machamp species is. After all, their primary trait is learning how to fight, so they'd naturally be fighting each other quite frequently.
Ah, the majestic Machamp, roaming the fields of the Kanto region, gently seismic tossing each other into orbit. Just imagine walking past that on your Sunday stroll.
You were right. The Pokemon world is wild.
This grabby match turned bloody brawl was intense and made me realize that we're all strong and beautiful just the way we are. No matter how many arms you have or whose wife you stole.
Good for you. While Goro put up an excellent battle that would have made his people proud, he didn't have enough to overpower the superpower Pokemon.
Unfortunately, this foe was forced to forfeit his 4 fists. Fitting that his final fate would be so freaking gory.
The winner is...
Gotcha! KO!
No! Seriously?
I know it seems ridiculous, but...
Seriously! How did that golden dingus beat Mutant Jesus?
Well, it sounds crazy at first, but Booster Gold actually had everything he needed to take Cable out.
Cable's powers were way more versatile and deadly than Booster's, and his lifetime of experience in the trenches made him the more well-rounded soldier overall.
But Booster had plenty of deadly weaponry in his own right, though his saving grace was that force field.
Sure, that thing survived some crazy stuff.
Including every single thing in Cable's arsenal. For example, Cable's telekinesis could move a planet and rearrange cells, right? Well, Booster's force field survived planetary destruction at the subatomic level, similar to a nuclear bomb, but on a massive scale worth about 14 tenatons of TNT, over 100,000 times greater than Cable's power output.
That's 40 fucking zeros, bitches! Holy mutant Jesus! And remember, his gloves use the same energy as the shield, so that means Booster is packing some serious heat.
Even in Cable's fight with the Silver Surfer, while he managed to keep up for a short while, once the Surfer got serious, the fight was over pretty quick.
Meanwhile, Boosty's over here in the same league as speedsters like Flash, and I know what you're thinking. What about Cable's mind control powers? Well, Boosty's shield protected him from Maxwell Lord,
whose mental powers, like Cable's, could also span an entire planet.
Yeah, Cable looked a lot better on paper, but he just didn't have a surefire way to put Booster down for good. And Booster had exactly what he needed to nab a victory.
This is one of the awkward things about comparing heroes from different franchises. Cable may be a gritty badass and Booster may be a silly goofball, but those distinctions mostly matter in their own worlds. In Death Battle, we have to compare them directly, and sometimes that means a hero no one's ever heard of wins.
Booster didn't just win, he took home the gold.
The winner is Booster Gold.
KO!
Well, Kakashi may have been able to beat Obi too, but he just couldn't handle Obi-Wan. Haha, got him.
Kakashi's wide array of moves certainly kept Kenobi on his toes, but the Jedi's arsenal was far more powerful and versatile than you might think.
Yeah, like how chakra is an internal life energy with a limited supply, but the Force is external and everywhere. Obi-Wan couldn't exactly run out of it, and Kakashi couldn't copy Force techniques, because, he's using external Force, not internal chakra. Totally different.
As for brute power, Ninja Mountain busting and Anakin's Dreadnought telekinesis were fairly comparable. However, Kenobi matched Anakin's Force power well after he had become far stronger than that.
This is the chosen one we're talking about here. Other Jedi have done some crazy stuff, like throwing a fleet of Star Destroyers out of a solar system in seconds and stopping a whole planet from going kaboom. Oh, and you know how Obi-Wan tore apart Grievous's armor with his bare hands in Revenge of the Sith?
The same armor designed to survive starship cannons. It withstood a blast that annihilated a subterranean city and almost collapsed the surface of a planet.
I seriously doubt Obi is physically strong enough to rip that armor apart, but apparently the Force is.
Even Kamui wasn't a reliable option, since Kenobi's reaction speed was nearly 70,000 times faster than Kakashi's. More than quick enough to avoid Kamui, especially with his precognition.
But we can hear you shouting in the back, what about Kakashi's dual Mangekyo Sharingan that Obito gave him, and the perfect Susanoo?
It's difficult to justify granting those to Kakashi at all, because they aren't really his. He could only use them when Obito's spirit briefly possessed his body.
Even if he did, the results probably wouldn't change much. Remember that Kip guy who moved a black hole? Yeah, he was directly compared to Obi-Wan by Luke himself.
If we're to take that at face value, this means Kenobi could theoretically call upon the Force to exert nearly 14 petatons of TNT.
Way more than what Kakashi was packing. And even then, Obi-Wan could just crush his organs. Shit, man, don't mess around with Jedi.
I know it can seem strange to hear about Jedi being this powerful and deadly, but think of it this way. Part of the reason why the Jedi Code is so strict is because of this immense power at their fingertips. The Code tries to keep them, civilized in a way.
But when you enter a death battle, throw those morals out the window. We're looking for who wins a no-holds-barred fight to the death.
Kakashi had many impressive tools, tricks, and techniques, but Kenobi's brilliant speed, overwhelming force, and greater level of power won this bout.
In the end, Obi won.
The winner is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
From a certain point of view. KO!
Well, looks like this dragon got burned.
This was a very unique matchup. With both fighters having such different power sets, it was fascinating to watch them clash together. Jake was technically more skilled thanks to his grandfather's martial arts training, and has proven capable of harming ghosts. But Danny's power and plethora of abilities was difficult for him to counter.
Yeah, Danny's no slouch and has fought a few more battles than Jake. Plus, Jake's never dealt with a ghost as powerful as Danny. Those cranky Civil War spirits didn't exactly have ice beams and ghost lasers.
While they may have been similar in light speed reactions, Danny's flight speed was definitely higher. Also, Jake's fire was comparable to 3 GBU-43 warheads, commonly referred to as the mother of all bombs. However, Dorothea's fire was equal to 700 of them.
And Danny took those flames on like a champ, which means Jake didn't have the firepower he needed to knock the teenage ghost down for good.
Danny could overpower Jake's fire with his ecto projectiles, match Jake's duplicates with his own, and even slip past Jake's heightened senses with his invisibility.
And while Danny had all those counters, Jake didn't have any against Danny's will or possession.
Jake may be the American dragon for good reason, but he couldn't match up to Danny's impressive power, durability, and ghostly abilities.
It didn't take long for Jake to fall short in this fantastic battle.
The winner is Danny Phantom.
KO!
Ooh, talk about taking a little off the top.
Both She-Ra and Wonder Woman had clear advantages over the other in this fight, some to great extremes.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious Adora was a lot stronger than Wendy. She-Ra moved the moon all by herself, while Diana needed a little help.
But strength alone obviously isn't everything. Pulling the Earth at all still means her strength was comparable to She-Ra's.
So let's check their experience, arsenals, and speed to see if Diana could reliably counter that power difference. And, spoilers, she definitely could.
First of all, She-Ra's transforming blade implied a broader versatility than Wonder Woman. However, unlike Diana's toolkit, very few of these forms were applicable to combat.
And I mean, having a shield is handy, but not when it takes away the sword you need to counterattack your foe after blocking. What kind of strategy is that?
Certainly not one Wonder Woman and her 3 millennia of experience would follow. She-Ra may have also been fighting all her life, but she's much, much younger.
Plus, She-Ra didn't have an answer to that atom-slicing sword. Atom, not that atom. With that in Wonder Woman's hands, the strength difference didn't really mean as much.
Still, in order to take advantage of all this, Wonder Woman needed to be faster than She-Ra. Let's look at Swiftwind and Crystal Sundancer. Logically, She-Ra rides these mounts to travel at faster speeds than she is capable of herself.
We know Swifty can zoom around over 450 times the speed of light, but the other little pony is way quicker.
Both He-Man and She-Ra were dependent on Crystal Sundancer for their trip to another galaxy, giving their time frame a generous benefit of the doubt with just 1 hour. This magic horse must have been traveling about 22 billion times light speed.
Definitely impressive, but then there's the Shattered God feat.
Right, the pieces of the Shattered God that Wonder Woman blocked all originated from far corners of the universe. Not the galaxy, the universe. Now, the exact size of the DC universe is a hotly debated topic. I know, very interesting stuff.
Oh, just skip to the good part, nerd.
Fine. There's plenty of evidence that it is larger than our own known universe. And there is more than 100 trillion light years between the Earth and the foreseeable edge. To close this gap in such a short time, each shard must have been moving over 50 quintillion times the speed of light.
And again, Diana blocked all of them, one after the other rapid fire.
Remember, She-Ra must be slower than Crystal Sundancer, potentially only comparable at a reactionary level if at all. Therefore, at absolute minimum, Wonder Woman was more than 9 billion times faster.
A much bigger difference than the strength comparison, and more than quick enough to stick that magic sword right where it really hurts.
She-Ra's amazing strength and versatility may have kept the Amazon running, but Diana's skill, arsenal, and incredible speed tipped the scales enough for a victory.
It's no wonder she ran out of time.
The winner is Wonder Woman.
KO!
Holy crap, this fight was so intense. I'm gonna get a beer for us. Wait, beer us, whiskey, champagne? Oh my god, all the cats are named after booze. I like them now.
This was a fairly balanced matchup. Galaxia's power set was certainly enough to keep up with Beerus.
Especially since she has so many more versatile techniques than him.
Not to mention, her crystal provided unlimited energy, while Beerus had a vast but still finite pool of ki.
But that's about where it all starts tilting the other way. Based on how fast their galaxy-spanning attacks were, Galaxia did have a slight edge in attack speed, but Beerus' Ultra Instinct made up for it. Plus, he had expert martial arts training, while Galaxia had none of that. Speed alone wasn't winning this fight.
Also, Beerus' skill set countered many of her own attacks. His energy nullification, for example, let him blast through plenty of her offensive options.
But to really lock down Beerus' superiority in all things destruction, how about we compare their power output?
Both of them used attacks that spanned their whole universe in seconds. But remember, the Dragon Ball universe is much bigger than our own.
Right, this universe is at least 9 times bigger than ours, and Beerus almost destroyed it all.
For the most part, the universe in Sailor Moon is very much based on our own. And the same should be said for Nehelenia's mirror universe Usagi destroyed.
So, pretty clear cut? That means Beerus is 9 times stronger than Galaxia?
Well, not exactly. They both are likely much stronger. Galaxia matched Endgame Eternal Sailor Moon in battle, who could destroy 8 of her Animamate minions at once.
Did you say Animorphs?
Long story short, a single Animamate could match a Sailor Guardian equal in power to Sailor Moon when she destroyed that mirror universe. While this is admittedly a very highball estimate, defeating 8 Animamates at once could logically translate to possessing 8 times that power. Since Galaxia could match her in combat, this potentially puts Galaxia's output level much closer to Beerus and Goku's clash.
But the shockwave happened when Goku had only just gone Super Saiyan God for the first time. Beerus claimed he was going all out with 100% of his power, but like all cats, he was lying.
Telling Goku that you were using 100% of your power was a very clever tactic to draw out his full strength, even though it wasn't true.
Even after Goku later achieved Super Saiyan Blue with Kaioken, a form many times more powerful than his first go at being a redhead, Beerus was still considered his superior. Simply put, even if we highball Galaxia and lowball Beerus, the god of destruction still possessed a greater amount of power, both in offense and defense, as they are identical when it comes to Dragon Ball Ki. Isn't that right, dummy?
Sailor Galaxia may have had a more versatile arsenal, but Lord Beerus had the strength, durability, and technique needed to overpower her. But you already said all that, so what's the point? Like my existence.
You could say she got caught in a galaxy-sized catastrophe. Can I blow him up this time?
I look forward to it.
The winner is Lord Beerus.
KO!
Okay, talk about cool as hell. That was epic.
Please, I'm grieving here. Both Todoroki and Zuko held solid advantages over the other. Zuko's martial arts, athleticism, and lightning-fast reflexes meant that if he could get close to Todoroki, he could likely end the fight pretty quick.
But Shoto's no slouch. The guy may be better at long range, but he's been in scraps before. Like with the super fast, super deadly hero killer Stain. And with all that ice popping up everywhere and his own super sliding and boosting skills, Shoto made it hard for Zuko to get close for long.
Plus, the speed difference wasn't all that drastic. Todoroki's fellow student Tokoyami's Dark Shadow blocked Kaminari's electricity after it had been fired. Quirks are not magic, and there are very few ways for electricity to travel through the air. Lightning is essentially an ionized path that electricity travels through. Kaminari's quirk must use the same method.
Dark Shadow blocked Kaminari, Bakugo dodged Dark Shadow, and Todoroki can match Bakugo in a fight. Bada bing, bada boom, that's lightning fast reflexes, baby!
While Zuko certainly had more control over fire, Todoroki could easily repel his firebending with his own flames, not to mention the clear difference in temperature. Zuko may be skilled with fire, but he's not immune to it, nor did he have any reliable counter for fast and massive ice attacks.
We don't even need to bust out the calculator for this one, Wiz. That stadium is circled by a 4-kilometer track. That's huge! And the edgy ice wall covered almost half of it in less than a second. Zuko didn't have that kind of power spread.
Yes, I know fire melts ice, but not instantly when it comes to gigantic glaciers. Plus, firebending becomes much more difficult in cold temperatures. Sure, Zuko's melted through ice prisons before, but only ones where he could still move or at least breathe. Remember, firebending requires breath and movement. When Azula was trapped in an ice prison so compact she couldn't move or breathe, she was helpless.
But Shoto could just freeze over Zuko's insides anyway. No way he was surviving that.
Zuko might have been an admirable bender and adorable fan favorite, but Todoroki's overwhelming ice, versatile defense, and incredible power were just too much to handle.
Zuko aimed for success, but his opponent Shoto put him on ice.
The winner is Shoto Todoroki.
KO!
So that happened.
Yeah, what happened exactly?
Well, this matchup was incredibly complex. Given their speeds were impossible to calculate, speed alone was, ironically, somewhat of a non-factor in comparison. Sonic in his base form didn't really stand a chance against Wally. Sure, he did seem to survive being launched 849,000 light years into an alien planet by a black hole imploding. However, considering he's been knocked out by far less, black holes are already imploding stars, and it seems some snow also inexplicably survived the trip. It's probably more likely the black hole acted as a sort of wormhole in its last moments and sent Sonic directly there. But if we assume Sonic was indeed blasted through space, a black hole's last moment usually results in an abrupt detonation equivalent to 5 trillion tons of TNT. Impressive, but the infinite mass punch could still deliver over 2 quadrillion times more power.
But Sonic's super forms were a different story. They had answers to almost all of Wally's skills. His chaos energy could replenish stolen speed, he was invincible, and he had frickin' wish powers!
Personally, I was expecting the opposite result. Against almost anybody else, Archie's version of Sonic is practically unbeatable. But across a greater percentage of possible scenarios, Wally just happens to be the exception.
He had every counter he needed to. The speed steal wouldn't stop Supersonic, but Wally still got that stolen speed for himself.
Super and Ultrasonic were essentially batteries of unlimited kinetic energy Wally could pull from. Even with their speeds being incalculable, this meant Wally could ensure he was faster. Plus, Wally performed a lot more of those incalculable speed feats than Sonic ever did, so he technically held an experience advantage in that field.
Chaos Wish Power would be an insta-win against basically anybody, but Chaos Magic uses physical energy, and guess what? Wally could phase through reality warping energy.
and jump through time or vibrate to a higher spatial dimension to avoid Sonic altogether. Even though he had no way to take down Sonic's super forms, Wally has proven capable of effortlessly moving and vibrating at top speeds for days on end.
So it wasn't too hard for him to just wait out the super forms and strike at the first good opportunity.
And when it came to Ultrasonic's ability to alter atomic structures, Wally possessed perfect control over his own individual molecules.
But hey, Sonic's the embodiment of chaos. Fate automatically bends to him or whatever.
Except Wally has broken fate a few times himself. The best example being when he ran to the end of reality and forced the concept of death itself to die.
Because Speed Force.
Simply put, Sonic's hypothesized nature as an anomaly in reality just wasn't enough protection against someone who could also break the rules of reality.
And remember, when Wally raised Barry, their speed almost tore apart the multiverse.
Both these characters understandably seem overpowered to an extreme fault, but it's important to remember that in their respective worlds, the story comes first. Sonic was impressive, improbable, inexplainable, but Wally had the power, the counters, and the speed he needed to pull ahead in this absolutely mind-bending battle. Oh, the drink is kicking in.
Whiz! I ran to Jupiter! I'm a god! A speed god!
Incredible. Tell me, what cosmic insight have you learned?
Just one thing. Well, Sonic didn't know it. The writing was on the wall, E!
The winner is the Flash.
And that made this fight a tough beer to crack. Well, except for the aquatic asshole, the Deep. I'd say his abilities to talk to fish and breathe under the sea were useless out of the water, but they were just as useless in the water too.
And unlike his teammates, the Deep never really displayed any notable feats of strength or skill. In fact, he was kind of a dork.
To be fair, he said he could survive 2 miles under the ocean. That's some insane water pressure.
The pressure at sea level is about 14.6 pounds per square inch, or 1 atmosphere. That's literally the pressure of air around you right now, unless you're on a mountain or something. This pressure increases by 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters you descend. So after 10 meters it doubles, and after another it triples, and so on.
And despite my lifelong crusade against the evils of math and the vampire god it's named after, even I can tell the Deep's body had to withstand about 4,700 pounds per square inch.
That's correct, Boomstick, but still about 10 times less than the pressure from your average bullet.
But you know who definitely was bulletproof? The all-American new girl on the block, Starlight. She tanked a couple rounds from a Cerebro BFG 50A sniper rifle to the chest like nobody's business.
Starlight's impressive durability, training, and flexible energy attacks made her well-rounded. But even with the strength to lift the back end of a car, she lacked the power to compete with the rest of the cast.
Yeah, aside from blinding people, her energy blasts aren't all that crazy. They're definitely lethal to regular humans, but not necessarily other soups.
Despite the way they look, they are more than likely plasma beams that emit light rather than being pure light themselves. Otherwise, they'd normally be invisible.
And they were snails compared to the superstar speedster and pro-girlfriend murderer A-Train, who once went all out and ran a race at 371 meters a second. That's just over the speed of sound.
So even if those beams were light speed, dodging them would be an enormous outlier.
Since A-Train beat Starlight pretty easy in their mano-y-womano fight, it's a safe bet the same would happen here. Or worse, like the time he turned Robin into a literal smear on the road. Again with the girlfriend murdering.
The energy to violently fragment a human body like Robin's is about 7.5 joules per cubic centimeter. Based on Robin's actress's height of 5'6", she would have an estimated 58,000 cubic centimeter volume.
That'd make A-Train's instant girlfriend murder attack worth 440,000 joules. No wonder he can pull 4 train cars behind him. Though, to be fair, that kind of attack required him to get up to top speeds and use his whole body, which isn't how he usually fights.
His effectiveness depends on the location, and he's surprisingly not very versatile. Despite his speed, he's left himself wide open for sneak attacks in the past.
So he wouldn't last long against somebody who's more skilled and could no-sell his supersonic body slam.
That's where the warrior woman Queen Maeve comes in. Based on her experience and martial artistry, she's clearly the most skilled combatant in the arena and by far the most durable.
Remember the time she stopped an armored truck with her body? Those kinds of vehicles can weigh over 11,000 kilograms and move at 75 miles per hour.
That's a kinetic energy of 6.4 million joules, over 10 times greater than A-Train's strongest attack.
And she didn't just survive it, she didn't even feel it. She cut through it like a hot knife through butter just by standing there. At her best, A-Train wouldn't be able to move her, let alone hurt her.
So out of the Deep, Starlight, and A-Train, Queen Maeve was clearly the winner.
But that's where the Cockney Super Slayer himself, Billy motherfucking Butcher, came in.
Obviously, Butcher would never win normally, but he was helped by his soup research, tenacity, and a laser baby. Which is totally cheating, but this is Butcher, so of course he would.
A big factor that helped him not get immediately stomped by the tougher soups like A-Train or Maeve was that, kinda ironically, he was just an ordinary human.
That's right, he had to be prioritized last, lest they leave themselves open to someone more obviously threatening.
This would allow Butcher time to put his soup-killing smarts to the test and strategize, like in his fight with Translucent in Season 1.
And while most of his arsenal wouldn't be too threatening, he has access to weapons through his contacts designed to take on some of the 7.
But let's be real, the big one here was the laser baby. That was an insta-win against everybody, even Maeve.
The baby's eye-beams are plasma, which is absurdly hot ionized gas. Plasma has an energy density of 10 billion joules per cubic meter. By measuring the volume of the baby's beams, they'd have to be emitting over 14 billion joules per attack.
That's over 2,000 times more powerful than that truck Maeve stopped. That queen got slayed.
Really, the only concern Butcher had was A-Train blitzing him and stealing the baby before he could even use it.
But since A-Train didn't know jack about it, there's no way he'd have gone for it before getting diced, especially since Butcher played it smart and kept his trump card hidden as long as possible.
Of the 7, minus Homelander, Maeve proved herself to be the strongest, toughest, and the most skilled, making her victory in a battle royale all but assured.
Until Butcher showed up with a laser baby. Then he butchered the competition.
I feel like that one was too easy.
Star lighten up, Wiz. Maybe it was, but I've A-trained in the art of the pun. I figured a joke any more deep might not have homelanded.
The winner is Billy Butcher. Was, until Homelander brutally murdered him.
And with that, our contract with Bot is over. Kiss my ass, you corporate yuppie freaks.
I can't believe they were gonna out us for or the or all those poor.
Yeah, that last one was definitely a war crime. Wait, are we still recording?
Oh, turn it off, turn it off.
KO!
Oh, talk about a headache.
These two were quite evenly matched. They both had wells of experience, similar arsenals, and an unparalleled drive to win.
They even had almost identical speed and reactionary feats, and Jason definitely had better stealth skills.
However, Bucky Barnes earned the edge in almost every other way.
Like how Red Hood had plenty of experience training with Batman and assassins, but Winty had decades of training on him with commandos, as the Captain's side piece, an emo assassin, and even as Captain America himself.
The Winter Soldier also had an edge in defense. His metal arm was able to shatter a knife on impact, but when Red Hood took a similar hit, his helmet cracked.
Red really didn't have any way to stop that arm for good, or Bucky's superhumanness. Sure, using Venom could even the playing field for a short time, but a brief power-up is nothing compared to a metal arm and the permanent infinity formula.
And don't take Jason breaking Supergirl's grip out of context. She wasn't expecting the Venom, and they weren't even fighting in the first place. It's interesting, but not nearly as noteworthy as it sounds.
Yeah, we know for a fact Venom is a 10-time strength booster. There's no way Red could match a Kryptonian in a real brawl.
Red Hood was a deadly combatant, but the Winter Soldier one-upped him with superior experience, survivability, and a consistent strength advantage.
Looks like Bucky was the winter.
The winner is the Winter Soldier.
KO!
Man, these symbiotes really need to stop picking fights with pink-haired anime characters. They're f***ing crazy.
Venom was certainly a tricky opponent. His shape-shifting camouflage and multitude of weapons kept Krona on guard. Unfortunately, Venom lacked the power needed to keep up a prolonged fight.
Yeah, Krona matching Black Star's speed makes for a pretty clear difference. Krona could reach Mach 9,000, while Venom only topped out around Mach 2,000.
And while Venom has shown incredible physical strength that puts Spider-Man to shame, he could never compete with 9 trillion tons of Mad Blood.
Which, by the way, that precise control of the black blood totally meant Krona could push out any of Venom's attempt at being a puppeteer.
And Krona has shown even greater feats of strength as well. Assuming all of the moon's teeth are similar in size and stone, opening this jaw is equivalent to lifting over 10,000 tons.
Of course, the final nail in Eddie's coffin was the fact that half of Krona's arsenal was sound-based, basically Venom's kryptonite.
Somewhat. Recall that Venom did gain a notable resistance to sound attacks, so we needed to determine if Krona's sonic waves were great enough to effectively harm him.
You know those gremlins who shattered every window in 10 miles with a screech attack? The symbiote barely survived it, so that's a good high end to look at.
It takes at least 100 decibels to shatter glass normally. To cover that much distance, the combined sonic blast must have equaled about 244 decibels. In contrast, in order to engulf the moon, Krona's sonic waves must have reached over 275 decibels.
And yes, that's considering the weird size and shape of the moon. Ugh, just look at that freaky thing.
Sure, 275 doesn't seem that much more than 244, but decibels increase on a logarithmic rate. This means Krona's sound attack was actually over 1,000 times stronger.
Vinny for sure wasn't surviving that.
Eddie and the symbiote held their own with versatility, but Krona and Ragnarok had them beat in destructive power, blistering speed, and an arsenal that could take advantage of Venom's key weakness.
Looks like Venom just got Ragnaroked.
The winner is Krona.
KO!
Wiz, I think I need to see a therapist to tell them how awesome that was!
Saberwolf was a ferocious foe, but Jon had a lot going for him in most regards. For instance, Jon was trained in genuine martial arts and practiced them for decades, while Saberwolf relied entirely on instinct.
You mean killer instinct, eh? You're no fun. But hey, remember how Sabi defeated Glacius, who attacked Arya in less than a nanosecond?
Technically, that put Saberwolf's reaction capability well within light speed, which Jon claimed he could match.
But that was just bragging, right?
Hardly. Those Weetzel units Jon fought were capable of flying across the galaxy, hundreds of millions of light years in only a short time. This is important because fellow Darkstalkers Morgan and Dimitri have intercepted Weetzels in mid-flight combat.
Yeah, those two are A-classers, but B-plus Darkstalkers like Jon have kept up with the higher classes in speed plenty of times. Hell, BB Hood can, and she's a C-class.
When it comes to the Darkstalker class system, speed is much less a factor than power and energy levels. To be frank, even if Jon was half Morgan's speed, he'd still be faster than Saberwolf. So, if anything, he wasn't bragging enough.
He was way stronger too. QB's also a B-plus Darkstalker, and she lifted that 30 million ton beehive. Way more than anything Saberwolf can pull off. And when it came to ranged options, I think a Flaming Inferno Key Dragon beats out a lone discount Firebat any day.
While his application is different, we can gauge the level of ki Jon has at his disposal by factoring Anakaris sinking all of Egypt.
So the only logical thing to do was measure the total weight of ancient Egypt. No, really, we did that.
Most buildings in the period were made of clay bricks and about 4.3 meters tall. Adding the known volume of the pyramids and considering additional land, we determined Anakaris' ki had to be strong enough to move a civilization weighing over 1.2 trillion tons.
And that's not even counting all the people, or cats. They had a shitload of cats. Now that sounds crazy for an old school horror monster like a mummy or a werewolf, but Darkstalkers aren't quite like the classics.
At this fight's core, though, Jon won because of the kind of werewolf he was. Through years of struggle, Saberwolf never found any means to tame his savagery, while Jon had successfully managed to regulate his wild side, giving a level of precision, skill, and control the poor Baron couldn't even begin to understand. Saberwolf was vicious and unrelenting, but Jon had the training, the power, and, yes, the Flaming Inferno Dragons to score a brutal victory.
Brutal doesn't even cut it. I mean, how much blood was that? You know, it had to be at least a gallon.
The winner is Jon Talbain.
KO!
What a battle! Who knew weather was so important?
As chaotic as the show we all know.
Okay, so the Reds had plenty going for them. They had brains and speed on their side with Simmons, and they had some epic firepower, but the blue team had the grit to overpower them.
When it comes to physical strength, nobody on the red team came close to the raw power of Tex and Caboose.
Flipping Sheila and lifting Andy made that pretty clear. Hell, Sarge even tried to lift Andy once and he couldn't do it. Poor guy. Even with such charisma, leadership qualities, and Big Dad energy, you can't win them all.
Speaking of which, it could be argued Sarge has more extensive military experience than anyone else. However, Tex's freelancer training was far more intensive than standard military issue.
Just look at what she did to the Reds before. She's a monster.
Not to mention she technically had 2 lifetimes of training, being a copy of Allison and all.
Yeah, her lame programming meant she couldn't win the fight by herself, but her blue teammates picked up the slack. Tucker even got some freelancer training in too, thanks to Agent Washington, and could hold off a platoon of mercs all by himself.
No one ever said he wasn't good at solo activities.
Oh, and in the fight between tanks versus cars, tanks generally win. I mean, that one's pretty obvious.
The red team may have been extremely resilient, mostly thanks to aggravating stubbornness, but it wasn't enough to survive the stellar skill and the brute force of blue team.
If only they could have read that they'd end up with a case of the blues.
And that's even without releasing the obviously superior power of artificial intelligence units.
You know, dummy, you ever wonder why you're here?
All the time.
The winner is the blue team.
KO!
Looks like Batgirl's turned into Splat Girl.
Batgirl wielded an impressive arsenal with plenty of tools suited to combat Gwen's abilities. Not to mention, Gwen was no match for her stellar intelligence.
Which made this pretty close. There are plenty of versions of this fight where Batgirl could take down the symbiote with sound and fire.
But even with such weaknesses, the Ghost Spider held enough of her own advantages to take the win more times than not.
So while Batgirl's training was certainly better, the spider sense is just super broken. Gwen and other Spideys have held up against martial arts masters like Captain America, who is definitely on par with super ninjas like Batman.
Not to mention, Gwen was clearly stronger than Barbara. Plus, Spider-Man survived that skyscraper bomb with the same powers, which Batgirl definitely wouldn't walk away from.
It was way bigger than the building blast that Batgirl barely survived. Hell, Batman's biggest explosion survival feat doesn't even match it. Listen, I know explosions, and by measuring the size of this blast, I can tell it's equal to about 60 tons of TNT. But applying the same math stuff to Spider-Man's, it's more than double that.
To be frank, Batgirl had the tools she needed to take down Spider-Woman. Gwen was simply stronger, faster, tougher, and made good use of the spider sense, making it extremely difficult for Barbara to land a decisive hit before taking one herself.
It seems batty, but Batgirl was overwebbed by Spider-Gwen spinning this one in her favor. Jesus webbed.
The winner is Spider-Gwen.
KO!
Well, I guess Lee can finally have that bout with Neji now.
Given Lee's years of experience and the power of the 8 gates, he definitely kept Sanji on his toes.
But Sanji was no slouch himself, and like Lee, has trained all of his life.
With his speed and observation hockey, he handled even the unpredictable Drunken Fist.
And while the 7th gate meant Lee could probably blow up an island, that's not as big as the meteors the Straw Hats could handle.
Simply put, Lee had only one somewhat reliable method of a possible victory: the 8th gate. A suicide move he's never actually used before. Not really the best argument for a win on its own.
But gate number 8 could take on Madara. Sanji's tough, yeah, but he's definitely not on that guy's level. A couple big hits from the 8th gate and Sanji's nothing but paste, so what gives?
Well, Lee would have to hit him first. While Sanji's power may not compare to the 8th gate, his speed is far beyond. Recall when his fellow rubber rabble-rouser Luffy, very patiently waited for a light speed laser to reach him before dodging it. To pull this off, Luffy would have had to move 13 times faster than light.
Sanji can regularly keep up with Luffy, and this was before he even got his super fast raid suit.
Don't get us wrong, the power of the 8th gate is incredible. If we were to run this fight 100 more rounds, Lee would surely land a winning blow with it a few times.
But more often than not, Sanji's speed is pulling this one off.
Given his speed, raid suit, observation hockey, and his fiery footwork, Sanji had everything he needed to outlast Lee's youthful determination for a victory.
Guess you could say he had a leg up on Rock Lee, hand over fist. Or I guess foot over fist, but you get it.
The winner is Sanji.
KO!
This just in, breaking news. Local area Saiyan literally too angry to die.
The Hulk had numerous advantages over Broly. He was far more experienced, slightly faster, and potentially smarter depending on which Hulk was in charge.
But since the Hulk's fight for control in Bruce's mind, it wasn't guaranteed he'd get one of the geniuses. Still, his healing factor was nuts. Broly wasn't gonna put him down with anything less than complete annihilation.
Fortunately for Broly, compared to his unbelievable power, the Hulk came up short.
I know what you're thinking. Hulk could destroy a universe 120 times over, while Goku could only manage a lowly 9.
But that was base Goku's strength. Broly's maximum, no pun intended, was far greater. Let's lay down some numbers.
As a legendary Super Saiyan, Broly was stronger than Super Saiyan Gogeta and took hits from Gogeta Blue without even bleeding.
Based on the Daizenshuu, the blonde Super Saiyan 3 form is about 400 times greater than Goku's base. Applied to Goku's new base in Dragon Ball Super, he would already be 30 times more powerful than World Breaker Hulk.
And that's before factoring in Super Saiyan Blue and Gogeta, which are way stronger than Super Saiyan 3.
With this in mind, legendary Super Saiyan Broly is thousands, possibly millions of times stronger than the World Breaker we've seen. While the Hulk's strength can keep increasing, so will Broly's, and it's unlikely he'd be able to catch up before being overwhelmed. After all, there have been multiple times when the strain on Hulk's body turned him back into Banner.
With that big of a power difference, there's no way the same wouldn't happen here. Even stuff like breaking space and time is nothing new to Broly and other Dragon Ball characters.
And don't misunderstand the Hulk's encounter with the One Below All. There's no evidence he directly overpowered actual Satan, just dispersed his cloudy avatar.
Hulk even said he was just doing that to buy time.
Broly's flight allowed him greater maneuverability and area control, plus he could attack at a distance with Ki. When Hulk did close that gap, Broly's force field and paralysis protected him up close.
And it's unlikely Hulk could land a lucky fatal blow, considering Broly took hits from Gogeta Blue, who's millions of times stronger than the World Breaker. You get the idea.
That leads us to our last and most important question. Could Broly bypass Hulk's immortality to put him down and take the win? Surprisingly, yes.
Whenever the Hulk or Bruce die, his healing factor kicks in to fix whatever wound killed him in the first place.
Meaning he still needs some element of his physical body that can heal itself in order to come back to life. The hypothalamus is key to this. Once it was destroyed by Hawkeye and his special arrow, Bruce took months to come back from the dead. With Broly's incredible power, there was no doubt he could vaporize Hulk and leave nothing left to heal.
Like basically every Dragon Ball Z fight ever.
The Hulk was an incredible opponent, but the legendary Super Saiyan's boundless power, arena control, range of techniques, and Saiyan rage spelled the end for the not-so-jolly Green Giant.
This incredible fight was insane!
The winner is Broly.